Hey, what's going on? This is Kyle at Projection Hub, and today I'm going to talk about how to write an executive summary for a business plan. Now, this video should be helpful no matter what industry, or if you're a startup or an acquisition or what have you. And I'm going to be demonstrating some examples for you today about how you can write an executive summary. As I mentioned, my name is Kyle, and before my time with Projection Hub, I was an SBA loan officer for about 7 years. And so, in that role, that looked like helping startups and small business owners basically form their loan package for an SBA loan. And I would review their business plans, review their projections, review all their documentation, and kind of take them through the SBA loan process. So have had the chance to see, thousands of business plans through that experience. And then with Projection Hub, we've helped more than 50,000 different small businesses specifically create the financial projections for their business plans, their loan applications and whatnot. And we have gotten the chance to work on many different business plans with different businesses too. So just a lot of, experience and reps when it comes to looking at business plans and, knowing what lenders are going to be looking for. So hopefully can share some of that experience and that knowledge with you today and giving you some actionable steps and how you can write an executive summary for your business plan that should do exactly what its job is. So if at any point you like this video, give it a thumbs up. That's really helpful for us as a fellow small business. And if you have any questions about your business plan or your SBA loan application journey, don't hesitate to ask us a question. You can do that down below the video in the comments below, or you can just contact us directly at support@projectionhub.com. We'd be happy to help you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so here we go. On the left, you can see kind of some examples of what an executive summary might include. And we're going to talk about each of those. And then on the right side, you're going to see I've got an example business plan template up for us here. This specifically is for acquisitions. This is actually a copy of one of our free business plan templates. We have closed in on 100 different free business plan templates for various specific industries and also some general universal ones like acquisitions or existing businesses. So we'll link that either on the screen here or down the description below, so you can go peruse those if you'd like. That might help answer some of the questions of, what should I include in my executive summary? Because that'll give you a template that kind of already has an executive summary built into it, and that will answer some of those questions for you. But in today's video, there are many different things you could choose to include in your executive summary. And again, I'm going to talk about those and maybe make a case for how that will be dependent on several different variables, depending on your specific scenario. But to start at the very basic beginning, what is the executive summary? I want you to kind of think about the executive summary as like the cover letter to a resume, like for a job application. So if you're applying for a job, most places are going to request a resume. And a lot of times people will put a cover letter on top of their resume. So the resume is going to include, more in depth about their experience and all the places they've worked before and their schooling and certifications and all of that. And depending upon the amount of experience they might have, a lot of people used to say, like, make sure your resume is only 1 page long. But, people who might have a lot of experience and a lot of things to share, like the resume is going to be longer than, 1 page long. And so the cover letter, though, is going to be kind of like the introduction to the person, right? It's going to be the introduction to you. It's going to be an introduction to the resume. And it's going to be written in kind of making sure it hits the highlights, the most important parts that you want to make sure the person knows about you before they hop into the resume. And that's very similar to the executive summary, right? So, your business plan, some business plans are really long. I won't go into too much of the detail today. I would recommend not to make them super long. This free example here is on the longer side. You can see it's getting up to 34 pages. I really wouldn't typically recommend that. I think acquisitions are kind of a different breed. There's just a lot more detail that needs to go into that. But your typical startup, business plan, I think, 15 to 20 pages is just fine. And so, but still, that's 20 pages worth of data. And if someone reads every word of that, they're going to get to know, you in the business and the whole plan and things around that. But the executive summary is the very first kind of introduction to, it's setting the scene, it's setting the stage for the lender, whoever it is that's about to read your business plan. So, and it can be very helpful for the lender when what you include in your executive summary really helps provide some context for all the things they're about to read. So if a lender is reading through a business plan without any sort of initial context that an executive summary could provide, they're not going to know things like, how big is this business? How much money are they looking for? What kind of money are they going to need? Where have they already secured some of that money? What is this person's experience? Now, all of those things will be answered throughout the business plan. But if they know some of those key answers before they even start the first word on the business plan, that makes the whole thing make a lot more sense before they even get started. Because to be completely blunt with you, most loan officers probably don't have time. They may have time to read your business plan once. They certainly are not going to have time or take the time to read it word for word more than one time. They're going to look at your financial projections many, many times after that. And they might look at specific sections of your business plan repeatedly, but they are not going to read the whole thing. Maybe even once or more than one time for sure. And so the executive summary is kind of our chance to make sure we put some key highlights that are, located throughout the business plan, but that's what we're going to lead off with because we want to make sure they understand this is the context, what you're about to read. And hopefully in doing that, it will, kind of unlock or improve the readers or the lender's understanding the very first time they read through the business plan, instead of missing some different details and important context because they didn't learn those things until the end. And that's really what the main goal of the executive summary is going to be. So without continuing to blabber on about that, just to show you some quick examples, and then we'll hop over here to talk about the different components you could include in your executive summary. So as I mentioned, this is a free acquisition business plan template. In our executive summary here, we've got a business overview. So exactly what it sounds like. That's a 2 or 3 sentence kind of summary of like, what does the business even do? This one being an acquisition, there's one in here specifically called like acquisition objectives. We've got a summary or highlight of the financials in here. And then we've got some key success factors, right? Before it moves into the next section. Some other examples, if I hop over to the SBA business plan. So this would be more geared towards a startup. We've got company overview. So very similar to the last one we just talked about. This one has some objectives. So some goals that have been outlined. Got a mission statement in here and keys to success, right? So it still has that key to success. And these other ones are going to look very similar to that, right? Another company overview, some objectives, mission statement, keys to success. And then this last one here looks a little bit different because this is kind of a one we actually did for a client, but changed a bunch of the data so we could use it for examples like this. And here we've got, a nice summary overview of the business, a little bit of vision casting here, which is still kind of just like business overview, mission statement type stuff, some strategic goals, some overview of the facility. So this example use case is a kind of a unique one. There's multiple business entities. There's an acquisition happening. So there's some different details. So we thought it'd be really helpful context-wise to have some images in here to kind of help set the table for the person that's reading it. So just showing you these examples is hopefully to give you a little bit of comfort that every executive summary can be different. Every executive summary should be different. I don't think you should stress too much about being like, these are the 10 things you need to include in every single executive summary, no matter what. I think it will change based upon what information you have available to you, what things you've figured out or decided, what things are your superpowers. Those are the kind of things that you want to focus on your executive summary. And then if any of these things over here, you haven't really prepared or don't exactly know the answer to it, or maybe the answer isn't super helpful, it doesn't play to your advantage, then I wouldn't include that in your executive summary. So let's look over here on the left side and talk more about what are some of the things that could be included. One of the ones that should probably be included, and I'll highlight a few of these, because even these examples over here, I wouldn't say that those are all perfect in their own way. I think that they're just different, but all of them need to have a business overview, right? So that's your introduction to who the business is, what it does, what it sells, how it makes money. You should do that in at least a few sentences in describing that. And that's one kind of disclaimer about, even like all these free business plan templates is they're meant to be templates. So they're going to be more general or generic. So you don't need to worry about matching the exact length of them or how many sentences were written. You should write how much you feel like you need to give a nice little bit of detail there. And Also knowing you'll be able to elaborate on any one of these points later in the business plan. Because again, the executive summary is just snapshots of sections that will be later in the business plan. So you just need to give a little bit of information, not the whole thing that will be included later. So a few sentences for each is fine. Mission statement is one of those ones that I don't typically advocate to include it, because not to be too harsh, but I just don't think it really matters that much. I think a mission statement is important to you as the founder. You know, what's your driving purpose for making this business work? So, you know, if that mission statement connects well into, you know, what's called like a unique selling point, or kind of like, again, that superpower, then maybe include that. But it's certainly not something worth spending a lot of time on, because this isn't going to really change your lender's decision. It's not, you know, that's not going to make that big of an impact. So include it, don't include it. Just if you are going to include it, make sure, you know, you don't spend a ton of time on it, because I really don't think it's going to make a big difference in the end of the day. Products and services is something that, I would probably not include this in an executive summary, at least a dedicated section. I would mention, again, in this business overview, you can say what the business does and what it sells. You know, if you are an e-commerce and retail store and you sell electronic accessories, then just like say that. I don't think the executive summary necessarily needs to be the place where you outline all of the things that you sell or all the services you provide. So this is probably a good one to just rope into your business view overview up here. Unless the thing that you're selling is highly unique or novel or a brand new invention or something like that, then it probably deserves, you know, its own section there. But if that's not the case, just briefly mention that in a sentence included in your business overview. Market opportunity is another one of those ones that I wouldn't include it unless it is a compelling game changer for the outcome of the business loan. So again, if you're opening up a spa in a fairly competitive market, but it's not a brand new use case, and it's not going to be like, you know, this town has been dying for a spa forever. Like, if it's not a very, very clear strength based upon a present market opportunity, then I don't know that I would include it. Reasons to include it, however, might be, let's say your business, or you know, a new business is coming to town, that a manufacturing facility, right? And they're going to be looking to source a specific type of component, and your business has the chance to expand to accommodate a specific contract or fulfill a contract or something like that. So it's a very specific, like, our business plan or expansion plan will work because of this very specific opportunity that's being presented. That's a reason to include that, because you would want your lender to have that context going into your business plan. Again, I'm not trying to downplay other businesses, but if there's not a specific opportunity that's kind of making or breaking what you're trying to present, then I wouldn't worry about including that here. You can just talk about that later when you're talking about like the competitors and the general, you know, market research you've kind of done for the area. You can do that later. Same thing for the competitive advantage. I probably wouldn't worry about too much going into detail on that unless it's a huge opportunity for you, right? If again, it's a very underserved market and you're going to be the first of whatever's kind in that area, then mention that in your executive summary. If you're just going to be kind of joining the competitive landscape and there's already some players in town, I wouldn't worry about saying that in your executive summary. But again, if it's a massive competitive advantage, then yes, include that in your executive summary. Business goals, I kind of like including this one with one caveat. Make sure that the goals are measurable, right? So let me give you some examples. Over here, we can probably have some bad examples. Okay, so here's an example right here. Short-term goal says, for this dump truck business plan template, their immediate objective is to establish itself as the go-to dump truck service in Indianapolis. That is not measurable, right? So a better goal might be is to establish itself and, you know, be profitable by within the first 18 months or something like that, right? It should be a very specific measurable growth thing that actually is important. It's a marker of success. That's what I would make that. Same thing for the long term. This says expand operations to serve other cities, which is a good long-term goal. I would make that more specific to say we hope to add a second location in Columbus, Ohio by year 3, right? So make that very specific, because again, that's reframing the context for your lender. That makes a big difference when they see like, okay, their game plan is actually to add a specific location in this city within X amount of years. That's going to change the way that they're reviewing, your plan and the context that you have for that. Whereas if you're just kind of generic with it, they're going to be drawing their own assumptions about what your plan is, whatever your objectives are. So just make it clear, right? You don't want the lender to have to think creatively about what you're doing. You want to tell them exactly what you're doing, what your plan is. Now, financial highlights, I think, is a big one that you should definitely include. That is probably the biggest context setter that you can have in your executive summary, other than just telling them what the business does. This is going to help them gauge, is this, small, medium, big business? Is it small, medium, big loan, right? Like, that's the kind of thing that you're going to want them to know early, because that will totally change the way that they're reading your business plan. Once they kind of know, like, what kind of scale are we talking about here? What kind of risk are they talking about for the loan? So include that early at the beginning is what I would do. And let's go back over the acquisition. Do we have one over here? Yeah. So you can even just see, it doesn't have to be a ton, because again, we're going to have a whole section down in the business plan dedicated to that. If you get any of our free business plan templates, you will see that. I can just even scroll down here to give you an example. You can see, there's a whole section with all these financial statements down here. You can get an example of how to do that. And also, all of our free business plan templates are filled with these nice key points. And as well as we have a video walkthrough of all of our how to write a business plan for any one of the industries that we have. But yeah, financial highlights, I think, is a big one. We were talking about it right here. We're going to talk about, the funding requirements, which that kind of parlays this one down here, if applicable. Right? If you're going to need a loan, if you're going to say we need $500,000, it's like, well, what's your game plan for getting that $500,000? Here in this example, we can talk about the owners are investing $75,000 of their own money. They're looking to secure a loan of $125,000, and they are going to have a $100,000 seller's note to help cover the acquisition, right? So you can see that's a $225,000, that's a $300,000. They need $300,000 basically, but they've outlined their plan for securing that capital. So now the lender knows, like, okay, they're looking at us for $125,000, and they're going to kind of have that context as they go through the rest of this. And then we can see, because this is an acquisition of an existing business, we can quickly see, okay, we're talking about $400,000 in annual revenue with a 20% profit margin, and they think they're going to be able to grow the business 25% in revenue and 10% improvement in profit margin. So now, just knowing that, I would have a better frame of reference for, like, how big is this business and how much money are they asking for, without going into a ton of detail there. So I think that that's very valuable. And so that's kind of this one here and this last one, the funding requirements. I think I would just kind of rope those two together. And then this is another big one, but I would say this is a good example of one of those ones that, if it plays to your advantage, then talk about it in your executive summary. If not, then you can wait for them to read more about it down in that section below. So in the cases where I think it would be an advantage, and this is talking about the management team and their relevant experience and expertise. So let's say you're trying to start a business and need funding. If you have very relevant and strong experience to the industry or related to the business you're starting, then I would talk about that, right? So let's say you're going to start a salon and you've been a stylist for 15 years, and for half of those years you were the most senior stylist and you managed the other stylists in a salon, and you're leaving to start your own location somewhere else, taking your customers with you and whatnot, right? So you could play out that scenario as much as you'd want, but that's an example of very relevant experience and expertise. And so that's a strong suit, right? And if we can include that in the executive summary, when your lender reads that, they're gonna know, okay, so they at least know what they're doing, right? And when they're looking through, they're not gonna be searching for that, because they already know, like, they know what they're doing. Now let's use the same salon example. Let's say you come from a different career. Maybe you're coming out of a 10-year stint in like a marketing field, right? But you have been kind of a hobbyist stylist on the side, and you have a friend who's been a stylist for a long time, and you want to start a salon together. That still is relevant experience, But that's kind of a harder picture to paint in an executive summary because you don't have a lot of space. So I wouldn't mention it there. I would just say up here in your business overview, you could just say me and, the name of your friend or wanting to start a business that does, a salon that does this thing. And then when you get down to that section, that's when you can paint the picture a little bit more. Or when you get to talk to your loan officer, you can talk to him about the fact, what is your experience in the transferable skills you have? And then how are you supplementing that with other relevant industry experience, right? So that it's basically anything that's just going to take a little bit more time to sufficiently explain or paint that picture, save that for down into the business plan. But if you can succinctly describe some of these things and it plays to your advantage and it really helps the lender by having that context going into the business plan, then include it, right? So again, that's kind of the overview of what you should include in your executive summary. There's several things in here you could include. You certainly don't need to include all of them. Use these to your advantage. You want your business plan to play to your advantage. And part of your advantage is making it easy on your loan officer, right? That does play to your advantage when they don't have to play detective to try to find all of these things, when you can kind of put the important things on a platter for them. You can also control the narrative a little bit. You can control the perspective by focusing on the important, like the necessary information, like what is the business and what does it do and how much is it going to cost? That kind of stuff is vital information. But then you can supplement that with what looks really good on paper for you. So maybe that's your experience. Maybe that's the massive opportunity you have. Maybe there's no game in town, so there's not competitive advantage, right? So pick and choose those other things that are going to supplement the necessary information. And that's what I would include in an executive summary. So there you have it. That's what I would say. Again, just a quick reminder, we've got a link to a bunch of different business plan templates if you want to get a free version of your own. I've also linked down the description below. If you are making your business plan for trying to get an SBA loan, we've got this free SBA loan checklist that is full of various links to free tools and videos and some information that just kind of covers everything from types of SBA loans and where to find a lender and typical process and what documents you'll need, that I think is just a really valuable tool for anyone that's considering going down the SBA loan route. And the business plan is just one component of that. So give that a look. I think there's a lot of really good information in there for you. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment down the video below the video, or contact us directly at support@projectionhub.com. We would be happy to help you directly. And yeah, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel. And I wish you the best of luck writing your business plan. Thanks.